Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about scatter plots again. We're actually going to talk about the trend lines on scatter plots today. Okay, when we look at our trend lines, there's basically two different types of trend lines that we can have. If there's a correlation, we can draw a trend line. So if it's a positive correlation, our trend line is going to look like this first graph. And if there is a negative correlation, our trend line is going to look like this graph here. Okay? So basically the trend line is just going to be a line that is going to hit as many points on your scatter plot as you can. Alright, so if we look at an example here, okay, we want to find the trend line of this graph right here representing altitudes and temperatures. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is actually draw our trend line in. Well, the trick to this is actually start at your y-axis somewhere and then draw a straight line somewhere through your data that's going to hit the most number of points as possible. So it looks like the best option here is I'm going to start on my y-axis at about 70 and I'm going to draw a line straight through here through my data. Okay, so obviously it's going to be a little bit straighter when you guys do it on a pencil or on a piece of paper. You can trace your ID card or something to make it nice and straight, but it should look something like that, your trend line. Okay, and then you're going to be asked to find the equation of the trend line. So if we remember, okay, our equation, when we're finding equations of a line, there's different forms, but the form I'm going to want you to use is slope-intercept form, so y equals mx plus b. Okay, remember where the y and x always stay there, the m represents slope and b represents your y-intercept. Okay, so the easy thing to find here is your y-intercept. So let's find that first. Well, I kind of already mentioned this before because we already started our trend line at the y-intercept, which is actually going to be at 70 right there. Okay, so our y-intercept is actually 70. Y-intercept, remember, is where it crosses the y-axis. Your y-axis is the vertical axis. Okay, so, and we know that it's going to be at 70 because if we look here, each little box is going to represent 10. So this first one here represents 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Okay? All right, and then we want to find our slope. Well, remember, slope is just rise over run. Okay? A lot of these things are going to be estimated with your trend line, so you may all have a different y-intercept and a different slope. Okay? As long as it's in the general vicinity, you're fine. Okay, so to find your slope, remember, rise over run. Okay, so rise means how far up or down do I have to go to get to my next point. Okay, you're always going to start with your y-intercept when you're finding your slope, and then always go to one of the last points that falls on your graph. So in this case, probably let's use this point right down here. Okay, because this one falls kind of on our line there. Some of you may be using a different point. That's fine. Just pick a point on your line to find the slope with. Okay, so our rise, okay, we're going to go down. We're going to go down all the way to 0. Okay, so our rise would actually be negative 70. And then our run, we're going to go all the way over to 5,000. So our run is going to be 5,000. Now, if you notice, we have one negative sign, which means our slope's going to end up to be negative, which makes sense because we have a negative correlation. Okay, negative correlation means you're going to have a negative slope. Positive correlation means you're going to have a positive slope. Okay, so then finally you're just going to plug that in your calculator, negative 70 divided by 5,000, which gives you, to the nearest hundredth, we're going to say negative 0.01. Okay, so your slope would be negative 0.01. So your equation then is just going to be y equals your slope, negative 0.01, x plus your y-intercept, which is 70. And there's your equation of your trend line. Okay, Remember, everything is estimated here. So some of you may have like 75 for your y-intercept, and some of you may have your slope a little bit different as well. Okay, here's another example. So we want to make a scatter plot of our data, okay, and then we want to draw a trend line and write its equation. Okay, then we're going to approximate the body length of a 7-month-old panda. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make my scatter plot and then draw the trend line through it. Okay, so here's your scatter plot, and the trend line here is drawn through a couple points on your scatter plot. Okay, remember we used our age here as our x value and our body length as our y value. Okay, so these are all, remember from yesterday, these are all coordinate or ordered pairs. Okay, so now what we want to look at here is to find our trend line. Okay, remember y equals mx plus b. Okay, our b in this case is just going to be our y-intercept, which in this case looks like it's right about, I would say right about 7 or 8. Okay, we can just use 7. And then to find our slope, okay, remember we want rise over run. Okay, in this case we should get a positive slope because it's a positive correlation. Okay, so we're going to start at our y, right about our y-intercept. Okay, remember, just estimate this. Okay, so I'm going to look at my y-intercept and I'm going to go from my y-intercept and I'm going to go to this point here. Okay, so I'm going to rise, looks like about 20. Some of you may say 22, 23, it doesn't matter. Okay, and then I'm going to run over to this point, which looks like 9. So 20 over 9. Okay, and when you put that in your calculator, 20 divided by 9, you should get about 2.2. Okay, so your slope is just 2.2. Your equation then is y equals 2.2x, your slope times x plus your y-intercept, which is 7. Okay, so there is your equation. Now it says, what is the approximate body length of a 7-month-old panda? Okay, so in order to figure this out, you're just going to plug in the 7 for x because your months, okay, are your x values. So we're going to plug in the 7 for x. Okay, so we're going to say y equals 2.2 times 7 plus 7. Okay, this is very, very similar for when you were finding the range. If you were given the domain, all you had to do was plug in the values. That's all we're doing here. So in your calculator, you're going to take 2.2 times 7 and then add 7, which gives you 22.4. And so it would be 22.4 inches at 7 months. So all we did was plug in the 7 for your x value, just like we did for domain and range. Okay, and then here's our last example here. We have ages and heights. The x value is age, the y value is height. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and make a scatter plot. Okay, so here's my scatter plot and my trend line. Okay, my trend line obviously is not completely perfect. Yours may look completely different if you were to do this exact same problem. It does not matter. Okay, so find the equation. First, we're going to find our y-intercept. Okay, that's going to be right about here. Looks like it's about 22. Okay, and then we want to find our slope. All right, well, I'm going to use my y-intercept, so 22, and then I'm going to use, I'm going to actually use this point here because it falls closer to the line than this last point here. Okay, so I am going to find my rise first, so it looks like I'm going from about 20 up to 40 because this point falls right about at 40, so looks like my rise is about 20. And then my run, I'm going to go from 0 over to 7, so my run is 7. Okay, so that means my slope, 20 divided by 7, is about 2.9. So my equation then is just y equals 2.9x plus 22. So there is my equation. Okay. All right. On this next one, we want to find what would be the height of a 20-year-old using your equation. So I just wrote your equation here that we found, 2.9x plus 22. So the 20-year-old would represent the x value, okay, because on our scatter plot we represented ages, ages on your x-axis and heights on your y-axis. So we're just going to say y equals 2.9 times 20, because it's 20-year-old, plus 22. So 2.9 times 20 plus 22 is going to give you about 79 inches. Okay, now some of you are looking at this problem going, that's kind of unrealistic. Well, technically it is, because when you draw a trend line for heights, the problem with that is eventually you stop growing. This is assuming that you never stop growing. So it's not too accurate when you talk about heights, but you can still figure it out. Okay, and that is how you find a trend line. Okay, for tomorrow, okay, what I would like you to do is just bring me some kind of feedback for what you've thought about this flipping process of the classroom so far. So, and we will see you tomorrow.